The release of version 2.0 gave us access to a brand new buffing mechanic called Spectro Frazzle, and Kuro has once again redefined what it means to play a gacha game because they continue to give the MC, which is Rover, special treatment by altering their kit slightly so that they can take advantage of the buffs provided by Spectro Frazzle. If you're new here on the channel, welcome to another video that belongs to the character breakdown series where I build and test your favorite resonators for a god-awful amount of time to give you tips and tricks on how you can use them more effectively. In this video, I'm going to be covering what Spectro Frazzle is all about, the basics of Spectro Rover's kit, advanced tips that you can abuse, best teams to play them with, best build available, and lastly a step-by-step showcase of optimized rotations that you can use to dish out the most damage. If this video proves helpful, informative, or enjoyable in any way, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and turn on the bell icon because it helps me out tremendously. Before we proceed any further, here's a quick rotation showcase of a Spectro Rover run in the Tower of Adversity to give you a glimpse of what Spectro Rover is actually capable of. Now, what the heck is Spectro Frazzle even about? Spectro Frazzle is a new enemy debuff mechanic that was introduced in version 2.0. How it works is that you need a character that can apply the debuff on enemies like Spectro Rover, who's currently the only resonator in the game that can use it. Spectro Frazzle stacks up as you attack the enemy with the abilities of your resonator. Rover can apply 2 stacks with her Forte skill and 6 stacks with her Resonance Liberation. How the debuff works is that the more Spectro Frazzle stacks you have on the enemy, the more damage the enemy takes every 3 seconds. The debuff can be seen right here under the enemy's health bar along with the number of stacks applied on the enemy. As you can see here, I had 10 stacks of Spectro Frazzle on the enemy, and the enemy was constantly taking damage of around 4.7k every 3 seconds. And when it drops to 9 stacks, the damage over time dropped to 4.2k. Keep in mind that the damage over time does not scale on Rover's attack, crit rate, crit damage, or any other amplification buffs in the game. And to prove that, let me remove all my echoes and give Rover a trash weapon, and then inflict the enemy with Spectro Frazzle again. So as you can see here, the damage is still the same of about 4.7k damage when there's 10 stacks of Spectro Frazzle on the enemy, with a trash weapon and no echoes equipped on Rover. The main playstyle of every character that can use Spectro Frazzle is to always maintain 10 stacks on the enemy because the Eternal Radiance Sonata effect grants you 15% spectral damage bonus if you attack an enemy with 10 stacks of Spectro Frazzle, but I'll give a detailed info about this set in the build section of this video. Now let's get into a brief basics of Spectro Rover's playstyle. Her gameplay revolves around building at least half of her Forte stacks with her dodge counter, basic attacks, intro skills, and heavy attack after tune. Pressing your skill button while you have at least half of your Forte stacks will unleash resonating spin and resonating echoes, considered as resonance skill damage, which is going to be where a decent percentage of her damage source comes from. All the methods of obtaining Forte stacks are quite self-explanatory, except the heavy attack after tune, so let's dive deeper into that one. After tune can be activated in 2 ways. The first method is to hold your basic attack after a heavy attack, where Rover will cast a heavy attack resonance, and pressing your basic attack again will activate the heavy attack after tune, where it looks like she snatches the soul right out of the enemy's body. The second method, which is highly recommended, is holding your basic attack after your basic attack 3 when the sword starts spinning, and Rover will activate heavy attack resonance. Pressing your basic attack again will then activate heavy attack after tune. Since Rover's normal skill duration applies to her Forte skill, she cannot use her Forte skill when it goes on cooldown, even if she recovers half of her Forte stacks again. So the best way to deal damage is to use her basic attacks combined with heavy attack resonance and heavy attack aftertune, which has pretty decent scalings when her skill is on cooldown, because always spamming your heavy attack to activate aftertune will drain your stamina very quickly, but the heavy attack version can be used as an opener, which I will explain at the advanced tips and tricks section of this video. That pretty much covers the basics. Now let's get into the more advanced tips and tricks section. Spectro Rover will lose Spectro Frazzle stacks every 3 seconds, and to prevent that from happening, her Forte skill applies Shimmer along with Spectro Frazzle stacks. What Shimmer does is that it prevents you from losing Spectro Frazzle stacks by maintaining the Spectro Frazzle stacks for 9 seconds. Keep in mind that the Shimmer duration will be refreshed after using her Forte skill again. With this in mind, your rotation should always focus on using a heavy attack after her intro skill to activate the 15% attack buff from the Silent Listener passive, and then use her Forte skill to apply 2 stacks of Spectro Frazzle, gaining 15% crit rate from her S1 and 10% Spectro Resistance Shred from her S6, and then finally use her Liberation. Rover's first basic attack is also insanely good for parries because the attack has a wider range and the arc that it makes when you use it actually lingers or stays there for a while, so sometimes the enemies can literally punish themselves by diving right into the attack, which makes it very easy for parries. One last thing to keep in mind is that her Forte skill has a decent level of anti-interruption, but per my testing, you need to finish the first stage of the Resonating Echoes animation before you gain the anti-interruption, so only the second stage has the highest level of anti-interruption. Now let's cover her build. The Eternal Radiance set is obviously the best set because Rover has access to Spectro Frazzle. This set is absolutely broken because you can decide to use a crit damage weapon with a crit damage 4-cost echo because of the 20% crit rate that you get from the 5-piece effect when you have any number of Spectro Frazzle stacks on the enemy. And with Shimmer, you can always benefit from the 15% spectral damage buff in the subsequent rotations, which will be explained in the rotations breakdown section of this video. For the stats, go with double spectral damage bonus for the 3-cost and attack for the 1-cost. Nightmare Morning Eggs will be the crit damage 4-cost, and it does a pretty decent damage when the enemy has the Spectro Frazzle debuff on them. Talent priority should be your Forte Circuit, Liberation, and basic attacks. For the weapons, go with Blazing Brilliance, which is highly recommended because of the crit damage substat, but if you don't have that, go with the Emerald of Genesis weapon because Rover can easily get the 2 stacks of the attack buff due to her low skill cooldown duration of 6 seconds. If you don't have that, go with the Somnoa Encore 4-star weapon, which was given for free a few months ago. But if you joined the game late, go with the Commander of Conviction, but make sure to stay away from the Lunar Cutter because that weapon is just terrible. For her team building options, we don't have a character that provides spectral damage amplification in the game, so stick with Sanhua and use the basic attack 3 aftertune combo to get decent damage from her basic attacks. Rover's dodge counter damage scaling is also very high and it's also considered as basic attack damage, so Sanhua's ultra buff will further boost the dodge counter damage. Now let's get into the optimized rotations. Here's my build for Spectro Rover. Here is a simple graphical representation of what you need to do. We first begin with Showkeeper's skill and then fill full Forte stacks. Heavy attack to consume the stacks, but swap to Sanhua. Use her Liberation, heavy attack, and skill right after she vanishes. But if you can't manage this, just do Liberation, skill, and heavy attack. Swap to Rover, do a heavy attack to gain the 15% attack buff, and then use Aftertune. But here I had to dodge counter, which basically achieved the same results. Use her Forte skill, Liberation, and Echo skill. The reason we use Rover's Liberation at the beginning of the rotation is to take advantage of the energy regen buff that we get from Showkeeper. Swap back to Showkeeper, fill full Forte stacks, use her Liberation if you have at least 75% of her concerto energy filled up, Echo skill, and intro with Sanhua. Sanhua should be able to instantly outro after the intro. Now intro with Rover, heavy attack to gain the 15% attack buff, and use her Forte skill. Now, focus on using the basic attack 3 after tune combo to easily refresh the 15% attack buff. Here, I made an error using her echo skill before her liberation because doing the opposite will give Rover more resonance energy. Your main focus is to use 3 forte skills before Rover exits the field. Use her liberation again and intro with Showkeeper. Use her skill, swap to Sanhua, and then repeat the rotation once again. Since we use Rover's forte skill at the end of the rotation, you have 9 seconds to rotate back to Rover to start doing damage before you lose the shimmer effect. If you're able to intro back to Rover in the second rotation within the 9 seconds shimmer duration, you can still keep the 10 stacks of Spectro Frazzle on the enemy, and every type of damage that you do in the subsequent rotations will benefit from the 15% Spectro damage buff from the Eternal Radiance set. Now, Rover's damage would have been a lot higher if I had the Blazing Brilliant Sword due to the crit damage substat, but even without it, the damage was still pretty decent. Getting a character that can amplify spectral damage will be a game changer for Rover, so she hasn't even reached her full potential yet. Hope you enjoyed the video, and be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and turn on the bell icon because it helps me out tremendously. Also, be sure to join the community Discord if you're having any issues with the game or you just want a place to chill or hang out. Link will be in the video description. Catch you guys in the next one. Bye bye.